For my final project, I chose to focus on dredging, specifically dredging of the Hudson River or any large body of water. Dredging can be a very controversial topic for various reasons, because some people believe it to be a positive thing, while others believe that it's actually an environmental impact and the sediments of the bottom of the water should be left untouched. So first of all, we're going to focus on describing what is dredging. Dredging is just basically the removal of sediments at the bottom and debris at the bottom of lakes and water or any water bodies. And sometimes it's necessary to clear up the sedimentation that builds over years, so that boats and other type of waterway transportation can get through, especially if it's a commercial waterway that is accessed constantly, such as the Panama Canal. Of course, there are environmental impacts, both negative and positive, to dredging, and those environmental impacts have health impacts, also both positive and negative, to the overall human health and then also natural health of the environment. Then we're going to discuss actions or recommendations on how to maybe not necessarily discontinue dredging, but just to monitor, to carefully to impact the environment as little as possible. So some of the negative impacts, environmental impacts of dredging is PCB exposures and turbidity. PCB exposure basically is the exposure to polychlorinated biophenols, which are made out of organic chemicals and can be very detrimental to the human health. The PCBs can be found in the entire environment, even after water evaporation, and it can still be found in large bodies of water. The breakdown of PCBs can take decades to actually be completed for the breakdown, and throughout this time it causes a lot of issues and a lot of health problems for those exposed to PCBs. The disposal of the dredging material can typically contain PCBs, which can impact the environment in itself in a negative way. The other environmental impact is turbidity, which is basically the relative clarity of liquid or water in this case. And of course, with dredging, sediments are brought up and moved and unturned, so the turbidity and the clarity of water becomes very opaque. There is no clarity. The higher percentage of turbidity, the higher and more likely it is for there to be some type of waterborne disease, which can later contaminate also drinking water depending on the different pathways. And then also the other thing, and so that can be detrimental to the environment, both the turbidity and PCBs exposures, if you go through with dredging, because you're bringing up sediments that had been at the bottom of water for years, and now you're bringing them back up and resurfacing all of those environmental exposures. Of course, on the other side of dredging, it improves overall water quality. It helps with restoring of habitats, and then also the economic impact, which in itself can also have environmental impacts and health impacts. The economic impact basically opens the waterways to be clean and easier to access, and boats won't have a difficulty entering if they need to deliver certain materials to the city. So, as I mentioned earlier, there are some health impacts to prolonged PCB exposures. Some of those, first of all, can lead to cancers in the digestive system, such as the liver and the skin as well. If PCBs are found in the bloodstream, it can cause lymphatic cancers, and it can also increase the risk of infertility and neurological health effects, and among many other things. So those are just some of the many things that can cause. Other issues could be increased exposure to metals, which themselves, hard metals, which themselves can lead to other consequences. PCBs are carcinogens and do contain some type of metals that can affect the health of our community. The other health impact with turbidity, as I mentioned before, the clarity of water, which can cause waterborne diseases and can also affect the health of fish and wildlife, which also is affected by PCB's level. So PCBs, because fish live in the water and plants and everything, that can also affect the overall the habitat. With the cleaning of the water, some parties argue that cleaning up the water, getting rid of the sediments, actually allows for the water to become clean, therefore allowing for the fish to become healthy, and then also for habitats to be restored again. Other issues, health impacts, noise and air pollution, which with the noise, the machinery, the constant hustle of the project, it can actually become stressful, especially with noise and air pollution. And then respiratory illnesses, again, pneumonia or asthma, different types of respiratory issues that can come out of dredging because of the machinery that's been used. As I mentioned earlier, some of the positive outcomes are increased quality of water and the economic improvement. With dredging, it could help to clean up the water, make it easier. If it becomes drinking water, it becomes in contact with drinking water, there's no risk of contamination. And then economic improvement, there would be boats with bigger blades will be able to go through if it's a commercial waterway. So there will be more jobs and better economy. So that's just some of the positive outcomes of dredging. So before we move on to the actions or recommendations, one of the issues that comes up also with dredging and economic impact is how expensive it can be. Some people believe it's better to just leave it as it is, leave the sediments where they are, not move anything, and some people believe it's actually better to uplift everything, move the sediments, get it out of the way, and then just continue growing within that environment. Some studies believe that it's actually more expensive to do dredging than just leave it as it is, just because the amount of dredging that is actually achieved is less than planned. And the people that are in support of dredging believe it's better to spend the money rather than just having sediments and particles sitting at the bottom of the river causing more problems. So some of the actions or recommendation is, first of all, I would think it's actually better to control the levels of PCBs found in water. So companies and agencies dumping chemicals into the water, being able to monitor what is getting dumped, where it's getting dumped, and the levels of PCBs that are being added to the water would actually probably help with either not dredging at all and not having to deal with sediments. Constant reading and testing of water to understand the PCB levels, and then also if it is decided to go through with dredging, it can be easy to control read the water if there's any waterborne diseases, or if the clarity of the water has increased, and if the clarity of the water has increased, maybe giving it time so it settles and then continue the project again. And then again, to finalize, it's just basically controlling the dredging environment, controlling the noise, controlling the sediments, controlling how often it takes place. In my opinion, based on the information that I found, I don't believe dredging is the best possible action to take in order to clean up the waterways, because it can have a huge impact. I think there's other things that we can do to clean the waterways, and like I say, control PCBs in the water and overall dumping of things into the water. It just takes a lot of money, takes a lot of effort, it's a lot of contamination during the process of dredging, and it's not exactly cheap, and the outcomes are still questionable overall. There's other sites besides the Hudson River where dredging has occurred, and there are positive outcomes as well, negative. So there's still a lot of uncertainty of what exactly, if dredging is really a positive thing or not. But based on the information that I've been able to find and based on my project, the information points to not going through with dredging and just letting it sediments stay at the bottom of the river and try to find other ways to clean the waterways, try to open up the waterways in a different way. So that's my conclusion on dredging. I think there's still a lot of studies going on to determine the actual outcome of dredging, and I would like to follow up this study further down the road to see what other results come out of dredging and those places that have not gone through the process. Thank you.